incredible. And we didn't talk about this, but it ties in so perfectly with what I want to talk about today. But before I start, what I want to do is introduce a young fellow, a young man who's been coming here now regularly for a little bit, but I actually know him for 4 years. You might as well start coming up, Louis. So Louis is going to give us a little testimony on his journey in unity. Louis, wait, you need the microphone.
I'm not good at public speaking, but here it goes. When I was younger, I started coming here as a foster kid, and I had really bad attitude. Anger management was not my strong point. But then I started coming here. We started with meditations and the teen group on Wednesdays, and it really taught me how to manage my anger. Just sit and take a second, and just calm down. So I don't know what else to say. I'm really bad at this.
Thank you, Louis, so much for sharing from your heart. And that really touched my heart. Did it you?
Yes.
Doesn't it feel great to hear somebody who's young and who is using and talking and being drawn to putting spiritual principles in their life? Because that's really what we do in those Wednesday night teen groups. We do a check-in and we talk about self-awareness, conflict resolution, gratitude. In fact, Louis has been drawn to coming here, and that's really what I'm seeing and sensing in him, is that he's now not in the group home anymore. He's 18. He came in, I met him when he was 14, and he now is choosing to come here, to be a part of our church. Something is talking to him. Something is pulling him in his heart. And he even joined me 2 Sundays ago. We went to Tampa. Louis and I did a road trip. I was speaking in Tampa and doing a workshop on self-awareness. And Louis was with me, and he participated in the workshop. And I think that why it makes me feel good and why it's resonating for all of you is because we all want to live an amazing life, don't we? Right? We want to live an amazing life. And I think here in Unity, we get that when we learn about spiritual principles, when we are able to absorb them and live from them, that changes everything. That empowers us, that changes everything. In fact, we actually have it as our 3rd principle. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So the other axiom that came to mind when I think about this is, if you spot it, you got it. Have you heard that one? If you spot it, you got it. We usually associate that with something that's not sitting comfortably with us, right? Somebody says something or doesn't say something, and we get very uncomfortable. We get, feeling like we need to respond. It's a discomfort that comes up. And that's inviting us to go deeper, to see what might be hidden, because we're projecting. But I think it works the same way in reverse. I think what it also does is we are drawn to the positive. If you've spotted it, you've got it. It's what you're drawn to, what you want in your life. And so in this particular case, what we're all responding to is how exciting it is to see a young person with their whole life ahead of them wanting to open up their heart in a spiritual way and let that guide them forward. So since we all kind of agreed that what we'd like to live is an amazing life. The question is, why don't we? Why don't we always show up for life fully, confident, boldly? And do we do that? Do we always show up that way if we know that this is what's really coming up in our heart? How can we make a choice, even if it's unconscious, and probably more often than we want, to be tentative, to be cautious, to be fearful, and not follow our dreams? You know, I think the reason that that happens is because in our human state, we are often dealing with what is coming up in us emotionally, what we're thinking, responding, reacting to our outside world, that external world. And unless we start to become aware and wake up, that's going to be how we live. And so we're not living with a practice that gives us that ability to shift and to move things the way that we really want. Instead, we're often living in a reactive place, a place where the outside stimulus comes and we're reacting, we're responding, we're just showing up, and then we breathe. So how do we live this amazing life? How do we live with divine audacity? I love that term, divine audacity. And audacity to me is a very powerful word. I just love it. I love how it sounds. It makes me feel like it's a big word. And I looked up in the dictionary, so I'm going to read this for you, what they tell us audacity is. Audacity is a willingness to be bold, a willingness to be daring, to be fearless and to be courageous, with a confidence and a clarity that makes things happen. The other part, divine audacity, is being soul-centered, being grounded in God, being guided from a higher level of spiritual principles. Living with divine audacity is about living boldly with spiritual principles, grounded and centered in the presence of God, knowing the truth that I am divine. Right? And this just touches my heart. This just touches my heart. So I'm going to share with you a little personal story. Not too much detail, so don't get too nervous and don't get too uncomfortable. This is the clean version. In our I'm going to back that up. I'm going to explain that further. In our teen groups, when they put on music after we eat, we have this free time, and they always say, "I want the clean version," because tell me, why, if you can do a beautiful song in a clean version, do you need it otherwise? But anyway, so that's where that came from. So anyway, what I wanted to share with you is an experience I had, an all too human experience. And it happened at 4 o'clock in the morning. When I woke up, and I just had this feeling of anxiety, and just feeling fear and you know, being nervous, and I don't know, all these thoughts that were coming into my mind. Has anyone had that happen where you kind of wake up at that early hour of the morning and everything seems more dramatic, doesn't it? When you get out of bed, finally, it doesn't seem like what happened in there in that early hours of the morning. Well, I had one of those. And so in that good unity student of life, that I tried to be, what I went to was meditation. And so in my meditation, as I was trying to breathe out this anxiety and just kind of let myself get centered, what came up for me so powerfully and so clearly were these two words: divine audacity. And that's why I'm here today talking to you about this. Divine audacity. And when I did get up that morning, I went to my bookshelf, because there actually is a book that's called Divine Audacity, and it's by a Unity minister, Linda Martella Whistlet. And it's a book that I've had up there. I don't actually know if I really ever read the whole book, but I must have been drawn to that name at some other point. And what I want to read now is what Linda tells us about divine audacity, because I love her words. Divine audacity is bold spiritual living. It is deciding to live fully from the inside out. It is taking the limits off ourselves and stretching into our transcendent power. It is boldly expressing the highest spiritual principles in the middle of everyday situations. It is living from your full spiritual resources, which come through you and not just to you. Isn't that a beautiful idea, if we can embrace that? I'm going to read that one more time, because I don't know, when I did open up that book, and that was right there, the little heading to the paragraph, what is divine audacity? And I read that. Like I said, I continued to read that for the next week or so, every morning, because it just resonated. Divine audacity is bold spiritual living. It is deciding to live life fully from the inside out. It is taking the limits off ourselves and stretching into our transcendent power. It is boldly expressing the highest spiritual principles in the middle of everyday situations. It is living from your full spiritual resources, which come through you and not just to you. We are human and divine. We talk about that here in Unity all the time, right? That we know who we are. We are human and we are divine. And we can't separate the two. You can't separate the absolute from the relative. We talk about them separately. We study them. We try to understand what is our human nature. What does that actually mean? It's living in the external. It's what's happening out here that's coming to us, and we're responding, we're reacting. This is where we get those thoughts and feelings and those beliefs. Being in that human nature also is about feeling safe. Remember our friend of our brain, that fight and flight? We want to feel safe. We don't want to feel pain. We're not comfortable with change. We do a lot of things to avoid going into that inner space. And today, we probably have more distractions available to us than ever, you know. And I'm guilty of that too. When I go to watch a television show, I don't know why I do this, but I do. When I go to sit down to watch a TV show, I make sure I have my eyeglasses and my phone. Just in case, in the middle of watching this show, I have to look something up. Or a text comes in and I have to see if somebody's, contacting me. Yeah? Yes, those phones. They can be a little addictive. But we are spiritual beings too, right? We have within us this divine urge. It's a divine urge to discover who we really are. What is our true essence, our nature? It's also an inner urge that wants us to grow, to evolve, to become more of this experience, this expression of God. I'm teaching a class. Oh, no, I want to first share with you what Jesus tells us about this. What Jesus, and I'm going to read this to you here. What Jesus tells us, and this is in Matthew 5:4-16. It's a powerful teaching. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. In that passage, what we're being told so clearly is what we are. What is our nature? You are the light of the world. Shine your light, because this is the light of God. You are divine. We're also being told what we're supposed to do with this, right? What we are supposed to do is shine it, not hide it. The third thing it tells us is that when we do this, when we shine our light out, it impacts everyone. When we shine our light, we bring blessings, we bring goodness to everyone and to our world. And the last thing that passage tells us is that when we do this, we bring glory to our Father in heaven. These are guides for us. These are guides for us that help us understand how to come out of that external world, because we do have these two energies. They coexist within us. They coexist within us, the external and this internal. And a lot of times they're kind of pushing, aren't they? They're pushing. There's a side of us that wants to make that time to be peaceful, to meditate, to get centered. But we're busy. We've got so much to do. You know, life is very full for most of us, and that's a wonderful thing. So they're kind of always pushing. And we get to choose. And when we choose, this is how we can live an amazing life. We get to choose, are we going to let our light shine? You know, I feel like I'm practicing this divine audacity on a regular basis. I really do. And I want to make sure that I'm clarifying that. I am not always living this divine audacity. As I shared already, I have my very human moments, but I am practicing divine audacity. I'm making sure that I give myself the time, that I understand and do the things that are necessary to help me to live fully, to live boldly. In both areas of my life, I have just been close to completing my internship up at Unity Church of Peace, which has been wonderful. So I am coming to a place in my journey in ministerial school where I will be licensed and ordained this spring, 2020, where I'll be licensed and ordained as a Unity minister and completed a Master's of Divinity program. So that to me is a big step, right? That was living boldly. Thank you. That was living boldly. That was following a calling that was in my heart and doing the steps that was needed. But the other part of it is, again, putting these spiritual practices, principles into everyday daily living. And so I'm teaching this class on self-awareness. So I'm teaching it twice. Monday mornings here at Unity of Fort Myers, and then Tuesday evenings up in the Unity Church in Northport. So I'm really getting an opportunity to go deeply, to really make sure I'm not missing any points on self-awareness. And what it's basically telling me in this class is how to connect to that inner life, how to connect to that inner part of us, how to raise the veil that separates our human side from our divinity, how to look at feelings, thoughts, and emotions that are coming up in us, that we're reacting to, that we're responding to, how to look at those emotions and ask the question, what in me is this moving? What is happening? Not why. We don't really need to do that. We need to say, in this present moment, what is coming up in me that is blocking me, that is holding me, that has me in that grip of anger, fear, anxiety, sadness, any of those emotions that can really hold us in place. What in me is responding to this? Moving it in, letting it just see if it can touch an area in our subconscious that maybe needs this healing. Accepting that this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And then moving it into our wholeness. Moving it into this big open space of consciousness. Can you almost feel that? Because I know I can. When I think of it, one of those kind of energies that can catch us up, and it's up here in my head, and you can almost feel it's impacting everything, your thoughts, your body, your whole soul, your spirit. You breathe it in, and bring it to your wholeness, and let it just be enveloped in that big, vast, open space of consciousness. It becomes small. It becomes small. This is how we step into this kind of life where we're living boldly, where we're able to have a meaningful life. Whatever that means to you, how we feel rich and full. Because one of the things that we know is that within us, when we can move into that space of our inner divinity, then we have in this place, in our core, everything that we need. Everything is there. All potentiality, all substance, all life, all love, all good. And Jesus, we're going to go back to our teacher here, and Jesus gives us another lesson that helps us understand this. In Mark 11, verse 24, he says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. It's not coming. It's not almost here. Believe it, and it will be yours. It is here. It's present. Self-awareness, mindfulness, and meditation are powerful partners that help us explore who we are at our core, who we are in our divine essence, who we are in our heart center. And if we can do this, if we can shift our perspective from our head Not just getting and understanding and knowing these spiritual principles, but shift them down into that vast open space of consciousness and live from that place. That changes everything. That changes everything. That puts us into the flow of life. And we're showing up as we want to be. So, yes, I'm on this journey of becoming a minister, which is exciting. I've put a lot of work and effort into it. And what is really, really important for me right now is to always remember is, and how does that show up? Who am I as this? And that is what I want to remember, that I am this loving presence. We all are this loving presence. We just have to remember it. We just have to connect to it. And the song that was sung earlier, thank you again for that wonderful song, brings to mind to me the fact that this isn't talking about how do I live an amazing life, because that'll be fun, that'll be great, sounds good. Why not? It's much bigger than that. Because what it's really talking about is how do I live from that spiritual center and knowing that when I do, it changes everything. We live in a time right now, and that's what the song was telling us. We live in a time right now that is very divided. There's a lot of heightened emotions, anger, fear, judgment comes at us all the time. A lot of times people don't respond in a way that's nice. A lot of times there's people that aren't kind, that aren't patient, that are critical, judgmental. So what we're looking at right now, what's going on all around us, is not a psychological crisis. It's not a political crisis. It's a spiritual crisis. Because a spiritual crisis can be defined as not knowing who we are at our core. And if we can step into that, shift our focus, come out of the external, go into that internal energy, that radiating center of love that draws us together, that lifts us to a higher level of being. What happens is it pulls everyone with us, right? Doesn't it do that? It pulls everyone with us. And that's how we show up in the world and make a difference. Once we are able to step boldly, step spiritually confidently, when we're able to know that I am living with divine audacity, I am living with bold spiritual principles, centered and grounded in the awareness of the presence of God and the truth of my divine nature. That is how we start to make a change in everyone, in ourselves, in everyone, and in our world. So I invite you to do this, because the time is now. We need to make that difference. We need to show up and be this loving presence that is bringing people together, that is radiating, drawing us to a higher level of consciousness. So I invite you to live with divine audacity. And so it is. Thank you.